And our main story this morning, Downing Street's accused Nigel Farage of being desperate for attention after the UKIP leader suggested Britain's race laws are outdated and ought to be scrapped.
Well, let's get more on this now. Nigel Farage made the comments in an interview for a documentary. Let's have a look and listen of the clip that started the row.
A situation that we now have where an employer is not allowed to choose between a British-born person and somebody from Poland is a ludicrous state of affairs. I think you should be able to choose on the basis of nationality. Yes, I do.
Well, the Labour MP Sadiq Khan is among those critical of Mr Farage.
I think Nigel Farage demonstrates breathtaking ignorance. He doesn't understand the history of our country or the importance of anti-discrimination laws that have led to the improvements we've seen over the last 20, 30 years. The idea that we've reached a state of utopia and things are perfect is ridiculous. We want employers to choose young Britons to take on jobs because they're the best people for the job, not because they're white or because they're Britons necessarily.
Well, in the last couple of minutes, Ed Miliband has waded into the row. Let's hear what he said.
I believe that Britain should be proud of the fact that we're a tolerant country. We're a country with people of different faiths, different backgrounds. I'm proud of that. And I believe that the laws that we have on equality are an incredibly important part of meeting the very British value that we treat everybody the same, whatever their background, whatever their religion. I think Nigel Farage's comments today are wrong, they're divisive, and they're dangerous.
So is the UKIP leader right? Are racial discrimination work laws outdated? Joining us now to discuss that is Harini Iyengar, who's a barrister specialising in discrimination and employment law. And Stephen Moxon joins us also. He's a former Home Office whistleblower and now author of The Great Immigration Scandal. Thanks, both of you, very much for joining us. Before we get started, a reminder, you can join the debate at home. You can email, tweet us at all the usual addresses, at Sky News, at Jane Secker Sky, including the hashtag Sky Debate. Text on 84501, email news@sky.com. Let us know what you think. Harini Iyengar, let's talk to you first. These laws that Nigel Farage is talking about are 50 years old. Aren't they ripe for some kind of updating at least?
Well, they're 50 years old because after the Second World War, countries got together, and Britain was one of those leading countries at the time, and said, in order to avoid another war, let's try and get a universal declaration of human rights. So the laws that we've got in this country on race discrimination are derived from fundamental values in human rights, treating people equally. And we had the Race Relations Act 1976 and different statutes on, for example, disability discrimination and sex discrimination. They all got updated and consolidated into the Equality Act 2010. So the law that has been criticised is actually a new and up-to-date law.
OK, Stephen Moxon, it's new, it's up to date, and it's about upholding British society, British values.
Nothing whatsoever to do with that. The breathtaking ignorance is by the Labour Party here. The Equal Opportunities First legislation is based on identity politics, which is backlash by the left against the mass of ordinary people. It's a long, complicated history and development dating back to circa 1930. I've written a paper on this, we can't go into it now. But it's not about being considerate to minorities. It's about contempt and hatred for the majority. In any case, Nigel Farage's comments are nothing to do with racism or ethnicity, as he's pointed out himself. It's to do with the problem of employers outsourcing and the need for employers to be given a free hand to choose Indigenous people, whether they're black or white. And as Farage pointed out, the main people at the moment are recently immigrated ethnic minorities. If BBC Newsnight want to find people disgruntled with mass immigration, they go to inner city Birmingham to talk to immigrants.
Harini Iyengar, what have these laws achieved over the last 50 years?
At the most basic level, they've provided people in the country with a peaceful and civilised way of sorting out their quarrels. So most employers are interested in having a productive workplace. Most employers, in my experience, want to hire somebody who's got the right skills, the right experience and a hard-working attitude. Similarly, most workers want to get on with the job, do well at it and get paid for it. Sometimes, unfortunately, people can't agree and people think they've been treated unfairly. These laws allow the employer and the employee to go to a forum, which is a court called an employment tribunal, which they both trust and respect, and have their quarrels sorted out in a peaceful and civilised way. I can't imagine how the country would get along and how business would get along if we didn't have a court mechanism for dealing with these kind of disputes.
Stephen Moxon, whilst racism still exists in our society, whilst inequality still exists in our society, don't we need to keep these laws?
No, because they're overzealous in the way that they're framed and the way they actually apply. And also, it's not looking, if we're looking specifically at racism, it's not looking for racism in the right places. The research shows that the basis of racism is what's termed in-group love rather than out-group hate. It's particularly strongest by people who feel threatened or are not the indigenous majority, but recently arrived migrant enclaves. And so racism is actually more apparent, black on white, or as I found when I lived in inner city Leicester, inter-ethnic. The problem there was racism by Afro-Caribbeans to various Asian groups.
Harini Iyengar, can we get you to respond to that?
I'm not really sure what he's saying. Is he saying, could you ask me a question?
Well, I mean, do you think, looking at these laws and looking at how they operate, we're talking about racism in society and how our society is. I'm wondering if you think, does having these kind of laws stop people being racist? It perhaps stops racist practices, but do you think fundamentally they change society over time? Do they make society better? Do they change people's minds, or do they just perhaps change the way they act?
I think these laws do help. They are a process that takes time. They help in two ways. First of all, if you're a minority or one of the protected categories, which includes women and disabled people, to give two examples, it makes you feel that you've got a place in society as a worker and that you're respected. If you work hard and you've got the skills and experience, you're going to be treated as an equal. And the second thing is, and obviously if you've been discriminated against, it gives you a financial remedy, which makes a big difference to individuals. And if you're an employer and you think, I've chosen someone to do this job or I've promoted someone because of business reasons that I can justify, you can go to the tribunal too, and you can say, look, I've not been racist, I'm running my business in a business-like way for good reasons. The other way is that it opens up a whole debate about what is race discrimination. For example, we've had cases about when people should and shouldn't wear turbans, you know, whether you should or shouldn't be able to cover your mouth if you're teaching in a primary school and you wish to wear a veil. It allows society and requires businesses to have training and open their minds and have some quite awkward conversations about what if a disabled person wants to work here? Have we got wheelchair access? Can we afford to create wheelchair access? If we don't, is there anything else we can do? And we have all kinds of training and policies that we just wouldn't have if employers were left to their own devices, I think.
OK, I'm afraid then we must leave it. Harini Iyengar and Stephen Moxon, thank you both very much.